We continue now at the top of Daf 65a Daf and Meseches Bava Basra. This is Bava Basra Daf 65a. The Gemara continues a statement from Rav Huna Amar Rav, Halacha kedivrei Chachamim. The halacha is like the Chachamim. The Rashbam explains Halacha kedivrei Chachamim, the mocher ba'ayin ra mocher, that a seller, he sells sparingly, he does not sell generously. For Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba Amar Shmuel, and Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba says that Shmuel says Halacha k'Rav Yekiva, the halacha is like Rav Yekiva, and the Rashbam says K'Rav Yekiva de ba'ayin yafa mocher, that a person sells generously. And the Gemara continues, Amar le Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba le Rav Huna. Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba said to Rav Huna, V'hazimnin sagian amrisa kame de Rav. Sometimes I said over in front of Rav, Hilchasa k'Rav Yekiva, that the halacha is like Rav Yekiva. V'lo Amar li, v'lo midi, he didn't say anything to me. Meaning to say, Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba was saying to Rav Huna, you, Rav Huna, are quoting Rav as saying the halacha is like the Chachamim, but I said in front of Rav that the halacha is like Rav Yekiva, and he didn't say anything to me. It seems to be that he holds the halacha is like Rav Yekiva. Amar le said to him, Hechi Tanisa, well, how was it taught? How did you teach it? When you said the halacha is like Rabbi Yekiva, what did you say Rabbi Yekiva said? Amar le said to him, Ibcha Tanina. He said to him, well, I taught it in the reverse, meaning to say I had the Rabbi Yekiva held ba'ayin ra, not ba'ayin yafe. And so the Gemara says, Misham hachi lo amar lach v'lo midi. It's for that reason that he didn't say anything to you, because since you had reversed what it was that Rabbi Yekiva held, so essentially you were paskening, you were ruling in the correct fashion. That's why he didn't say anything to you in that situation. And the Rashbam explains, Amar le ipcha Rabbi Yekiva ba'ayin ra. He said to him it was the reverse. According to Rabbi Yekiva, it was ayin ra. Well, the Rabbanan ba'ayin yafe, and according to the Rabbanan, it was ba'ayin yafe. And the Rashbam notes, Gemara hu de kamafarish de ipcha havatani Rav Yirmiyah. It's actually the Gemara that's explaining that Rav Yirmiyah taught it in the reverse. Umiu iu lo amar le Rav Huna lashon zeh ipcha tanina. But he didn't actually say to Rav Huna this idea that it was in reverse. Shem haya yodeya she'ein Rav Huna shona kamosa, because had he known that Rav Huna didn't teach it the same way he did, lo haya lo litmo, he shouldn't have been surprised. Dehainu hach de bein le Rav Huna bein le Rav Yirmiyah, because then it would be identical. They're both saying the same thing. Whether Rav Huna, whether Rav Yirmiyah, they're both saying hilchasa, that the halacha is the be'ain ra mocher, that the person sells bi'ayin ra, and so therefore the Rashbam is noting that it's really the Gemara that is pointing this out. And the Gemara continues, Amar le Ravina le Ravashi. Ravina said to Ravashi, Leima azdu l'tay mayu. Let us say that they follow their reasoning, that we find this machlokas in a different context. The Rashbam says, Azdu l'tay mayu, de l'rav bi'ayin ra. Again, according to Rav, he says the halacha is like the Chachamim, that a person who sells bi'ayin ra. He sells sparingly. V'lo Shmuel ba'ayin yaf, and Shmuel, he holds like Rabbi Yekiva, that a person sells generously. Let's say that it's the same machlokas in the following case. The Amar of Nachman Amar Shmuel, because Rav Nachman says that Shmuel says, Ha'achin shecholku, let's say you have brothers and they inherit property, they divide up the property among each other. And the Rashbam notes, Ha'achin shecholku shneim mochrin zelazeh, when you have two brothers dividing, they're both really selling to one another. So the halacha is, Ein lohen, they don't have against each other, lo derech zelzeh, they don't have a path against each other, v'lo sulam zelzeh, they don't have the rights to ladders against each other, v'lo chalono zelzeh, they don't have the rights of windows against each other, v'lo amas and they don't have the rights of a water channel one against the other. V'hizaru behen shalachos kvuas, and you have to be careful because these are permanent, these are set halachas. V'Rav Amar, and Rav says yeshlan, that they do have these rights. And the Rashbam explains, Ein lohen derech zeh, they don't have the rights to a derech one against the other, meaning im cholku shnei sados echon natal chitzon v'echon natal pnimi. For example, let's say they divided two fields, one of the brothers took the outer field, the other one took the inner field. V'ein hapnimi yochol likonis l'sadeyu el derech chitzon. Now the person on the inner field, he can't enter his field unless he goes through the outer field. B'derech shaya aviv nichnas, in the same way that his father, when his father owned both of the fields, he used to go through the outer field to get to the inner field. But the halacha is, Ein lo lepnimi derech al chitzon. The person on the inside does not get a derech. He doesn't get a path. He's not allowed to walk through the person on the outside, the brother on the outside. Misham de mocher ba'ayin yafa mocher, because when he sold, meaning when he sold the outer field to that other brother, he sold generously. V'lo shayer derech liatzmo, he didn't leave any path for himself. V'keven shemocher lo la'achav chelko shebechitzon ba'ayin yafa mocher lo. When he sold the brother his portion on the outside, he sold generously. Kol hasada, the entire field, va'derech, and the path. V'lo shayer he didn't leave himself anything. V'hainu Shmuel atayman. So that's what the Gemara is saying over here. This is Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel. Shmuel is following his opinion. The pasuk Rabbi Yekiva, he holds like Rabbi Yekiva. The mocher ba'ayin yafa mocher, that the seller is selling generously. The lagabe panimi shaykh lememer ayin yafa, the guy on the inside is generously giving away even the path. The afal pishatzarch lefroach ba'aver, even though now he needs to fly in the air to get to his field. Lo shayer liatzmas haderech, he didn't leave for himself a path. Aval gabe chitzon, but when it comes to the person on the outside, the Rashbam explains, lo shayich ayin ayin ra b'masha eno nosein lo es haderech. There you don't call that an ayin ra in the fact that he didn't give him a path. Sharei eno mocher b'sada zu hachitzon ela lokeach, because he's really a buyer on this field. He's not a seller. V'lokeach lo shaykh ayin yafa. You don't talk about ayin yafa by a buyer. Aval b'sada hapnimi havehu mocher. But when you're talking about the inner one, that person is a seller. Shemacher lo'achav chelko. He's selling to the brother his portion. Uvahu shemachar lo shar liatzmo klum. Whatever he sold, he's not leaving himself anything. V'leko ayin ra gabe klal. There's no ayin ra at all by him. Again, this is talking about the rights to block windows, to put up walls around the windows. V'lo chalonos, meaning to say, he wants to build in his chatzar opposite the wall, the window rather, of his brother. He can build. Kivuos kilomar shahalacha kain, means to say this is the permanent established halacha. Again, the idea being that Shmuel is saying mocher ba'ayin yafa. When a person sells, he's going to sell generously. That's what Shmuel is saying. And again, that seems to be Shmuel following his opinion that we paskin like Rabbi Akiva, like we said at the top of the Yom, that Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba said, that Shmuel said the halacha is like Rabbi Akiva. And Rav says the opposite. V'Rav Amar, Rav says yeshlen. Rav says they do have these rights, meaning he's saying that the seller is selling ba'ayin ra. That seems to be consistent with what Rav said. And the Gemara says tzricha. The Gemara says it's necessary to say by both. It's not exactly the same. You wouldn't have known necessarily one case from the other. The iash minan behai, because if you only had that case, meaning if you only had the situation here of the brothers, be'ahi kama Rav, so it's in this situation where you have the brothers there, Rav says, mishum da'amar le, he says to him, he's able to say to him, Ba'ino lemedar bei ki hechi dedaru bei avasi. I want to live in this field the same way my fathers lived in this field. Meaning to say, in this situation, Rav is saying that the brother, he does in fact have the right to a derech in this case. The person who's on the inside, he does have the right to a derech. He's allowed to use the path from the outer field. It means to say that the person on the inside is not selling generously. But maybe Rav would say that only over here because he's saying, I want to use this field the same way that our father used the field. The father, when he had both of the fields, he would walk on a path from the outer field to the inner field. So here already there's a reason to say that he doesn't sell generously. That's why Rav said it. Teda, you should know Dechsiv, because it's written in the pasuk. This is a pasuk in Tehillim. It says, Tachas avosecha, yubanecha, that the sons, they replace the father. They're instead of the father. So I have the right to use the field in the same way. Aval baha, but in this case, meaning to say, when you're talking about a situation of selling a house, and then he retains for himself the bor and the dose, and so the question is, does he retain a path for himself as well? Ema modele l'Shmuel, I would say that maybe Rav admits to Shmuel, and Rav would say that he does sell generously, he doesn't retain any derech for himself. And the Gemara continues, V'yitmar bahan, if we only had the case in our Mishnah, so there bahach kamar Shmuel, so maybe over there Shmuel says, only over there Shmuel says that the seller sells generously and does not retain a path for himself. Avol baha, but over here in this situation when you're talking about the brothers, Ema modele l'Rav, I might say that Shmuel admits to Rav that we say he does not sell generously because he wants to use it in the same way that his father used it, and so therefore it's necessary to say in both cases that in fact it is the same machlokes. Rav says mocher ba'ayin ra mocher, and Shmuel says mocher ba'ayin yafa mocher. And the Gemara continues, Amar le Rav Nachman le Rav Huna. Rav Nachman said to Rav Huna, Hilchasa kavasin, o Hilchasa kavasaichu, is the halacha like me or is the halacha like you? Who do we follow? Amar le, so Rav Huna said back to Rav Nachman, Hilchasa kavasaichu, the halacha is like you, meaning the halacha is that we say mocher ba'ayin yafa mocher, a person does sell generously, to mekarvisu lebava de reish kalusa, because you're close to the gate of the reish kalusa, the shchichi daine, where there are frequent judges over there, and therefore you know how to rule in these cases. And again, we do paskin mocher ba'ayin yafa mocher. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. Itmar, it was stated, Shnei botim zelifnim mizel. Let's say you have two houses. One is inside of the other, meaning to say in order to get to the inner house, you have to pass through the property of the outer house. So the halacha is Shneim b'mecher, Shneim b'matana. Let's say one person is selling these two houses to two individuals, or let's say one person is he's gifting these two houses to two individuals, so he's giving it in the same manner. So ein lohen derech ze al ze. There's not going to have a path one on the other, meaning to say he's giving it equally to the person on the outside and to the person on the inside. The person on the inside does not get to have a path through the house of the person on the outside because he gave it to the person on the outside generously. He gave him everything, just like he gave to the person on the inside. Everybody is getting their entire property, so to speak, and we don't say that the person on the outside loses out, that now the person on the inside gets a path through his property. And the Gemara continues, V'chol shekein chitzon b'matana, upnim b'mecher. This is certainly true. Let's say the person on the outside got it as a gift. We assume a gift is more generous, and the person on the inside, he bought it, it was sold to him. So there certainly we're going to say that the person on the inside is not going to get a path. He's not going to be able to walk through the property of the person on the outside, because the person who was given it on the outside was given it as a gift. He was certainly given it in a generous fashion. But the question is, chitzon b'mecher, let's say the person on the outside, it was sold to him, upnimi b'matana, but the person on the inside, it was gifted to him. So the Bach puts in the word mai. What would be the halacha in that situation? Meaning, would we say in that situation, since the person on the inside, it was given as a gift, maybe he got it in a more generous fashion than the person on the outside, and maybe he does have a right to walk through the property of the person on the outside. And the Gemara says, Savar mina, they thought to say about this, ein lohen derech zeh, that the halacha is the same, that they don't get a path one on the other. The person on the inside is not just allowed to walk through the property of the person on the outside, but the Gemara says, Veloi, it's not true. Milo tanan, because did we not learn in the Mishnah, when is this true? B'mocher, by a sale, when a person sells. Avol b'nosen matana, but a person gives a gift, and nosen is cool, and he gives all of it. Alma, we see, man di yoiv matana, we see from there that when someone gives a gift, ba'ayin yofa, yoiv, he gives it in a generous fashion. Hachanami over here as well, man di yoiv matana, ba'ayin yofa yoiv. A person who gives a gift gives it in a generous fashion, and therefore in this particular case, where the person on the inside received it as a gift and the person on the outside as a sale, then the person on the inside will have the right to walk through the derech, the path, on the property of the person on the outside, because he received it in a more generous fashion than the person on the outside. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Hamocher es habayis, if somebody sells a house, Mocher es hadeles, then he sells along with the house the door, Avalo es hamafteach, but not the key. Mocher es hamachtesh es kavua, he does sell along with the house the mortar that is fixed, the mortar that's permanent, Avalo es hametalteles, but not the one that is movable. Mocher es ha'itzdorobel, he does sell the itzdorobel, which is the lower part of the millstone also, that's fixed to the ground. Avalo es hakeles, but not the upper part, which is not fixed to the ground. That does not come along with the sale. Velo es hatanor, velo es hakirayim, and also the oven and the stove, that is not included in the sale of the house. And the Rashbam explains, Hamochres habayis stam, somebody sells a house stam, doesn't have any details of what's included. So the assumption is, Machar v'chulu, klola demil. So the Rashbam says the general rule is, Kol tashmishe bayis hakvuim, anything that's in the house that is fixed, that is permanent, it's attached to the ground, mechur and bechlal bayis, that is sold together with the house. V'ametaltalin, and anything that's movable, einam mechurin, that's not sold together with the house. And the Rashbam continues as hadelas, the doors included, the chol ha-mechuber lekarka hareo kakarka, anything attached to the ground is like the ground. Avaloes hamaftech, the metaltala, the key which moves around, that's not included. Hamachteshes hakavua bekarka, again the mortar that is fixed to the ground, that's included. It's the robil is ogol shesaviv harechaim, that's again the lower part of the millstone. V'davar kavuahu ve'in mezizan osom mekomo, that is fixed in its place. You don't move it from its place. But hakeles hafracheses, that refers to the upper part of the millstone. Umetaltalasi, that's moved, and therefore that's not included. And loes hatanor veloes hakirayim, the oven and the stove are also not included. The cholanach metaltlan, all of these are moved around. That's in the Tosefta as well. And so therefore, again, the general rule, if it's fixed, attached to the ground, it's included in the sale, otherwise it is not. And the Mishnah continues, Bizman sha'amar lohu v'chol ma'asha besocho. Now, if the seller says to the buyer, I'm selling you the house and everything that is inside it, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf 65a Amud Beis.